Good morning, the Guardians 300, and everyone else for that matter. I'm going to show you a video. I've asked myself numerous questions about this video, and I'm sure you're going to ask yourself questions about it. If you're a member of the police force, you should be asking whether this is lawful. If you're a member of the public, you're a grandma, you're a mother, you're a woman, you're a man. You should be asking, if this was your sister, your daughter, your granddaughter, would you really be okay with the way that she is being treated, and her children? Because I can assure, if these were my grandchildren, I would be incensed by what I'm about to show you. And it also begs a number of other questions. What have we come to? How many freedoms do we actually have if you cannot even be treated appropriately? The place this lady was put in was nothing less than a prison. It's just that what society wants us to believe is that she's in a hotel, but the way she's being treated is as if she's in a prison. And of course, that's her story. The bottom line is that if they can do this to her, they can do this to anyone. And I can assure you what is currently happening is unlawful. They might consider it to be legal, but there's a difference between legal and lawful. And I don't expect you to know that. But I want you to watch this video and draw your own conclusions from this, because I personally was horrified enough, and just amazed that people can be put in these types of situations in 2021. So take a look, draw your own conclusions from this, because remember, this is not just happening to anyone. This is happening to people that are everyday people in our society. People that have the right to inalienable freedoms.
My name is Francisca. I'm 36 years old. I'm a qualified social worker of 11 years, and I'm from London, England. And I just escaped from a COVID prison. I'm making this video because I want this information to be out there, and I hope to help and inspire anybody who's in the same situation as me. So this all started because I travelled to Costa Rica for work for 2 weeks, and while I was there, the government changed the country moved it from amber to red. While I was already in the country. I'm a single parent of 2 children, both of whom have disabilities, but my eldest son in particular is severely disabled. He has a very rare brain malformation, deformity called schizencephaly. He's also diagnosed with autism, with learning disabilities, and has a communication level in the 0.1 and 0.2 percentile for expressive and receptive language. My understanding is that I would qualify for a medical exemption based on the fact that I needed to return to my children, and my children have these documented disabilities. I arrived in Manchester on Monday the 14th of June, and I explained my situation to the border force at Manchester Airport. I spoke at length with somebody there. I explained everything that I've just said now. They took multiple pieces of information from me. They took my name, my date of birth, my address, my children's names, dates of birth, address, the exact nature and title of all of their disabilities. They checked that I had a negative COVID test that had been taken within the last 48 hours, which I needed to get on the plane. They checked that I had completed the passenger locator form, and they checked that I had registered for a 2 and 8 test, and made the decision to let me through at the border. I returned home to my children, and spent the night with them. The following day at approximately 2 p.m, the police arrived at my door, and I spoke with PC, whose details I have, who explained to me that the Home Office had ordered him to come to my house and remove me to a COVID hotel, that there had been a mistake, that I had been let through incorrectly, and that I needed to quarantine in a hotel. I explained to that person that this wasn't possible because I was a single parent and I needed to look after my children. He then suggested that my children would have to come and quarantine with me, and if I wasn't to comply with this, that my children would be removed and put into care for the period of time that I was quarantining. Also, that if I didn't comply, I was to be arrested. They discussed with me the possibility of my children being sent elsewhere. However, were in agreement that this would undermine the COVID rules because I had already returned home to them, and that would possibly place somebody else at risk. I showed them my son's medical documents and explained that I felt that I was entitled or met the criteria for a medical exemption. They then tried to make contact with the Home Office liaison who had ordered them to come to my house to collect me. And there was a change of constable. In the meantime, it took about 3 hours for this person to get back to them. This constable then came back to my door, or this PC, whatever he is, came back to my door and informed me that having sought further instruction from the Home Office had informed him to kick down my door, forcibly remove me and arrest me to take me to a quarantine hotel. He stated that he wasn't going to do this, but again was taken over by his colleague. His colleague suggested that I gather all my medical evidence and take it to the COVID hotel, upon which I would be met by a Home Office representative, and that person would look at the documents and likely grant me a medical exemption. They placed myself and my 2 children in a police car, locked us in and took us to Manchester, Radisson Blu, near the Manchester airport. Upon arrival, there was nobody from the Home Office to speak with. In fact, there was just security and medical officers. The medical officers there, whose names, again, I have and can provide, they observed my son and they were in agreement that it wasn't safe for him to quarantine in a hotel based on his medical needs. They then contacted the paediatric registrar at the Evelina Children's Hospital, where my son has had a number of different assessments or different interventions, and the paediatric registrar also agreed, having looked at my son's medical notes, that it wasn't safe or reasonable for him to quarantine in a hotel, and is in support of a medical exemption for me. They presented that information to their Home Office liaison, who firstly requested for the paediatric registrar to put this information in writing, which would have been near on impossible because of his responsibilities to the hospital at the time. But the medical staff wrote something in support of me having a medical exemption and my son being able to leave. The Home Office then suggested to medical staff that if my son was too sick or too at risk, or placing himself or other people at risk, quarantining in the hotel, that they were to remove him and detain him in a hospital by himself for the duration of the quarantine. The medical staff said that they did not agree with that, and instead the suggestion was made to me that should my children be able to take a negative COVID test the following day, that they would be allowed to leave and stay with family members in London, and that I would have to quarantine at the hotel. I said that I thought that that was rash and it was risky given the state that my children were in at the time. And furthermore, that it didn't make sense because if I was the person that was transmitting this virus and they were negative, then logically I should be able to leave as well. Irrespective, the Home Office requested that medical staff contact social services and ask social services permission to have my children removed and transported to London away from me so that I could quarantine in the hotel. I refused to allow that to happen. and instead they checked me into the hotel and said to me that they would be liaising with the Home Office. I tried on numerous occasions to get more information from them, and they constantly said that they were liaising with the Home Office, but nobody was giving me any updates. Staff and the Home Office were having conversations and corresponding, discussing my case, information that I wasn't privy to, conversations that I wasn't privy to. They took all of my son's medical records and didn't return them. I still don't have them now. And at no point did I consent for any of this information to be shared verbally, written, or otherwise. They kept me locked up in that hotel for 8 days with a 17-year-old who was extremely vulnerable and a vulnerable 10-year-old, knowing full well that it says all over my son's paperwork that he can become aggressive when overwhelmed, and that they were placing myself and my youngest son at risk. I've spent 8 days not leaving that room because I was too scared that if my son left, they would arrest him or they would section him. So we've had to stay in that room with no access to the outside world for 8 days. And as much as staff have been polite and kind, nobody did anything. And I've spent the last 8 days trying to manage the situation to ensure that nobody was harmed, that my son wasn't put at risk because he wasn't able to manage the situation. Trying to explain to him why he couldn't leave. Trying to make sure that my 10-year-old wasn't attacked because my 17-year-old wasn't able to manage being in there. And I was left in that situation. Nobody did anything, and everybody just kept on saying that they were doing what they were told. Nobody wants to take any responsibility for the fact that they've knowingly locked me in a room with a volatile, vulnerable 17-year-old with absolutely no redress, no recourse, nothing, nobody that I could speak to. I tried to speak to so many people to help us, and there was nobody. Nobody wanted to do anything because nobody understands the legislation or just every avenue that I tried to pursue to get out of there. There was no one that was willing to help us. So I finally managed to speak to some people through a friend who suggested that maybe this organisation could help. They're called the Guardians 300. I explained to them my situation and they called me back immediately. They explained to me my rights under common law and gave me instruction as to how to register myself and my children under common law. And they came this morning and they got me out. Getting out was traumatic, to say the least. People trying to barricade me in the lift. Yeah.
It's coming. Just leave it.
Can you move out the way of the door, please? Can you move out the way of the door, please?
Yes, he's coming.
Can you move out the way of the door, please?
I'm doing my job.
People obstructing myself and my children from walking. Fine, thank you.
Huh? Stop, wait. No. Hello.
Hi, sorry, no, we're leaving. Can you not touch me?
I'm not touching you.
Good. Can you mind out the way, please?
Huh?
I'm a living woman and you don't have any jurisdiction over me. I'm going.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me, which room is it?
Doesn't matter.
Which room you are?
Excuse me.
Wait.
Excuse me.
Wait, I'm
Excuse me.
secret. Here is my job.
No. Can you not touch me? Can you not touch me? Can you move, please?
Wait, I'm not moving.
I'm a living woman and you don't have any jurisdiction over me. I'm leaving.
Floor 8. We have one woman who want to go on.
Sorry, can you mind out the way, please?
Yes, wait.
Are you blocking my way so that I can't leave? Is that what you're doing? Excuse
Hello,
me.
workers.
Come here. They ended up, despite the support that I had downstairs and the staff there stating clearly that I was free to leave, but that I could be at risk of a £10,000 fine, which, you know, I can argue with the courts. Despite saying that, I had numerous security guards trying to block my path. When we finally got out, they were trying to block the car. They were trying to rip the door open to try and drag me and my kids out of the car. No. No, they're security. They have absolutely no power. None.
Right. Get in the car. In the back.
Get in. My kids had to watch all of that happen. I've now got a 10-year-old who's saying to me that he doesn't want to live anymore because he's so scared. Just how are they doing this to people? How is this for anybody's safety? How is this allowed? And all the people that are just complicit in this situation and saying that they're doing their job is no better than the fucking Nazi state. People experimenting on people and killing children and gassing human beings and saying that they were just doing their job. People have got to stop being complicit in this. It's a disgusting situation. And I think this is something that's going to live with my children for a long time. They are significantly traumatized and I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from this situation, trying to keep myself and my kids safe. And I can only thank the people that came and rescued me for their hard work and their dedication and their courage. Because we were at the end of our tether in that room. It's horrific that they can do this to somebody. I'm a good person. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I've never ever committed a crime. I'm a fucking social worker, for God's sake, you know. And they just came and took us and put us in a van and just locked us up and threw away the key, and that was it. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. We can't accept this. And people need to know their fucking rights. And they need to know exactly what their rights are on this earth because we're living under a dictatorship, under the guise of a fucking democracy right now. And no more. And I'm glad I took a stand, and I'm glad I did what I needed to do. And I just hope and pray that my kids and my family can recover from this ordeal. And my son's mental health, which deteriorated day by day, is able to manage life now and get back to, you know, the person that he was growing into before this happened. You know, I told staff so many times, my son isn't eating. He's not eating, he's not drinking, he's not getting up. And everybody was really sorry and everybody was really, you know, morally supportive, but left us there anyway, knowing full well from the moment that we came that my son was not suitable to be in this place. And yeah, I encourage anybody that's in this situation to contact Guardians 300. They're going to fucking sort you right out. Because we don't have to stand for this. We don't. And I hope that I can be an inspiration to people who feel like they don't have the strength and they don't have the courage to do something. You don't need to live in fear. This is not what we were put on the earth to do. We were not put on this earth to serve somebody, to live like peasants, and to be scared, to just be, to just exist. It's not right. It's not right. So, my love to everybody that's out there dealing with this, everybody that's fighting in this struggle, and everybody that feels that they don't have the strength to do that. You do. You fucking do.
Yeah, hi, sorry, can you tell me who this is?
Yeah, I appreciate you just setting up your recording there. My name's Sergeant Harrison. I'm calling from the police in Liverpool.
Yeah, and can you tell me what the intention of this call is?
Yeah, well, sort of trying to get onto them when you asked who it was for the second time. So, clearly we've had a report from Greater Manchester Police that you've come back from red listed country, and that 3 people have facilitated your exit from the hotel that you should have been staying at with, I think it's your 2 children. There is a power for us to take you back by force. It's an offence that you're committing by not staying in that hotel. So before we end up on taking enforcement action, are you willing to do the right thing and the proper thing and go back voluntarily, or do we have to send officers to come and take you back?
Can you explain to me a little bit more about this enforcement?
I don't have to explain it. So it was all explained to you before and upon your arrival into the country.
Nothing was explained to me. Sorry, can you just explain this enforcement that you're trying to undertake on me?
Yeah, I'm not going to explain anything more than the fact you've come from a red-listed country and you have to quarantine inside a specific hotel, as has been explained to you. And obviously an incident happened where 3 males have facilitated your removal from that hotel, which clearly wasn't there. Just been informed by Greater Manchester Police. But the fact is you're not in the hotel you should be, and you're therefore committing an offence. The police have a power under the health protection regulations to remove you back to that hotel, return you, back to that hotel, and use force if it's required. Clearly, we're adults. You've got your own opinion of COVID, I'm sure. However, these are the rules that we've got to follow. So I'm trying to be an adult and speak to you before we end up on taking enforcement action and take you back.
Yeah, so could you please explain the enforcement order?
I'm not explaining anything more than that.
Okay, well, I'm asking for you to explain the enforcement order that you're asking me to comply with. So could you please explain the enforcement order?
So I don't understand what you mean by the enforcement order. Clearly you want me to try and say something on your recording, so what is it you're trying to get me to say? I don't quite understand.
I'm asking for you to explain the enforcement that you've just stated that I'm under.
Other than just repeating myself, I've just explained that you've come from a red-listed country. The health protection regulations state that you have to quarantine for 10 days inside a specific hotel. That hotel was identified to you upon your arrival, and you've been removed from that address or left with 3 males, and clearly it's therefore a breach.
A breach of?
I've just explained to you 3 times, I've said it.
So just to be clear, it's a breach of?
I've said it 3 times. I'm not going to be repeating myself for your recording. I've said it 3 times for you, so you have heard it enough times. So I'm trying to be an adult about it.
I'm still very unclear. That's why I'm asking for you to clarify.
Okay. Well, I can't explain it anymore because I've just been explaining it the way I've done it 3 times, so I won't be explaining myself any further. I'm trying to do the right thing and speak to you amicably, as opposed to sending a bunch of cops around to your house. So, are you willing to go back voluntarily, or am I having to send officers around to come and take some enforcement action to remove you and your children back to the hotel?
Yep. So the enforcement action, that is warranted by what?
I've already explained it 3 times, exactly what I've just explained. It's all covered under the health protection regulations.
Under the health protection regulations. And what are the health protection regulations?
I'm not going into your recording to give you a sound bite. I'm trying to be an adult and explain things to you as best I can. But clearly you want me to say things on camera for you that you then want to post somewhere, so that's fine. We've given you the chance. We've tried to speak to you and explain what's going to happen.
So you're unwilling to give me clarity as to what exactly it is that you're doing, and under
that might be what you want for your camera, for your recording, but that's not the case. I explained
it's what I'm entitled to as a sovereign being.
It's what, sorry?
It's what I'm entitled to as a sovereign being. I'm entitled to understand what action you're taking against me and where that comes from.
Yeah, that's not my fault. You don't understand what I'm saying to you, and I've said it 3 times. I can't think of another way of explaining it. Therefore, I've explained it as best I can, and I won't be repeating myself again.
Okay. Well, again, I'm asking under what how you're enforcing this decision. That's what I'm trying to clarify right now.
What do you mean how I'm enforcing it?
So, sorry, what did you say it was being enforced under? The what?
So the legislation, I've said it 4 times. I'm not going to be repeating that again.
So that's legislation. And what part of the legislation are you taking this enforcement under?
I'm not going to go into detail over the legislation. It's on the government website if you want to look at it. So my job isn't to explain every part of the legislation to you. My job is to explain in layman's terms the fact that you have breached those regulations.
But I don't understand in layman's terms how I've breached those regulations.
Right, well, I can't explain it any further.
I don't understand the legislation, which I'm asking for you to clarify for me.
That's your issue. I've explained it as best I can. I can't think of another way of explaining it. So by all means, Google it. It's on the government website on gov.uk. It's all there for you.
But I'm asking for you as the person who's having an adult conversation with me to be clear as to what action you're taking and where that action's coming from.
So I've explained it as an adult. I've said it 4 times. I can't think of another way of explaining it that you might understand. So therefore,
it's not a lack of understanding. It's a lack of specificity.
No, it's a lack of understanding because I've explained it as much as I'm required to.
But I've asked you further questions. I've asked you further questions.
You want me to go into the specifics of the legislation so that you can record me and then trip up of the wording that I've said.
So that I can understand. That's not what I'm here for. So that I can understand my rights. Right, so that I can understand your actions.
Okay,
so that we can all be clear.
I won't be explaining any actions to you. What I'm explaining to you is that it's a breach of the regulations. I've explained that enough times. I've explained it enough times, so I'm going to leave you.
So by now you'll have watched the video, and I hope you're as horrified as I was when I saw it, because to be honest with you, it's completely unacceptable. If you look at it from a lawful perspective, it is unlawful, and we'll show you why. If you look at it from a human perspective, it's inhuman. There is no reason for this to be happening. And I know that some people say, well, we have a pandemic going on. Look at the death rates and ask yourself if the current death rates actually justify this overreaction. What really amazes me is how the police are prepared to lie. Police who lie are not police. They're not police. They shouldn't be in the police. If you remember, police constables, they were created to protect the freedoms of the people. They've strayed away from that. They are following unlawful orders. And of course, when you do that, you're no longer a police person. You're an agent of the state. And so, when you become an agent of the state, you are complicit in what is going on. And at this moment in time, people are being coerced into sacrificing their bodily integrity. They're being imprisoned. That's what you've seen in that video. People would have you believe that they're in the Holiday Inn Express as if they're on holiday. They're not. This one was just an experience of nothing less than a prison. She tried to be heard, was never heard. You can even hear the police telling lies about what they've done to deal with this and how they were going to deal with her, scurrying her into a certain situation where she was forced to put her 2 children in a position that they should never have been in today's society. However you try to justify this lawfully, you can't, because it is unlawful. So thankfully we have people that are prepared to defend these people. Thankfully there are people that have the moral courage to go and help people like this lady. If you are on the wrong side of history when this is all over, I can assure you, whether you're a hotel owner, a manager, whether you are a nurse, a doctor, whether you are a politician, whether you are a police person, I can assure you there's going to be enough peace constables trained to find you and make you accountable for all the decisions you've made while this has been going on. Because if you can't be bothered to find out what is going on, ignorance is no excuse when it comes to law. You should be looking. You should be considering the alternative narrative to this, which has never been openly academically debated for a reason. The newspapers were silenced, mainstream media was silenced in March 2020 for a reason. That's censorship on a level that's never been seen before. Look at social media. Social media is experiencing censorship like it's never been seen before. We are doing nothing less at this moment in time than entering a communist state, which is leading us exactly to the state that Boris tells you in his speech of 2019 to the UN, where he talks about how this is going and where it's going. And he is simply just describing technocracy, a form of dystopian fantasy, he says. This is not a dystopian fantasy, it's an emerging reality, and it is. And this is where you're being led right now. If you don't see that, then you are truly blind. And I'm sure that we all have our opinions about the jab. We warned a year and a half ago that this was about the jab. We warned it was going to be a health passport. We warned that the government is using this as a political tool. We know there's been something out there that's killing people. We know that. But where did that come from? And unless you clinically isolate it, you have no way of identifying it. You therefore can't create a reasonable strategy for coming out of it. And this is why we also knew that there was no way Boris was going to lift a lockdown, and he won't. There'll be more, and they will tighten the grip as they go along. But we can stop it. We can stop it quite simply by learning the law and applying our basic freedoms. Say no. If everyone said no tomorrow, this would stop tomorrow. And I can tell you now that moment is coming. The momentum is changing. And you will see the character in some of these politicians, because when this starts to change, like little rats jumping off a sinking ship, that's exactly what will happen. You will see their character. They have none. I'm on my way to attend a protest in London today. I can guarantee there will be about 2 million people there. You will not see that on mainstream media for a reason. They want you to believe it's just a couple of hundred nutters. Well, you know, ultimately, I've held a number of positions. When I was at the academy, I took William and Harry through their adventurous mentorship, and numerous other people who were considered to be highly educated. And so, from my perspective, the police at this moment in time are using every trick in the book to manipulate people and to scare people into this situation. I'm going to say to the police, remember what your oath was. And if you can't remember it, go and look it up. You made an oath to protect the people. You are from the people, for the people. You're not above them. You are actually below them. You serve them. They don't serve you. Politicians do not serve. Politicians are supposed to serve you. We don't serve them. Police by consent. If we do not consent to what they are doing, they are acting unlawfully. Remember that. Governments don't govern outside of consent. The governments don't get to rule us. They rule us by consent. When we stop consenting to what they do, they no longer govern us. If we understand this, we're halfway to resolving this issue. So I'm going to say to people, if you want to be trained as a peace constable, if you want to make a difference, if you want to change the momentum of what's going on right now, then join us on the Guardians 300. Let's train you in law. Let us train you in a strategy that is going to be reversing this situation from the ground up. It's about numbers on the ground, and it's about people power. We will always do our job in peace and honour. That's what we stand for. So if you're the person that wants to be aggressive, there's no point joining us, because we stand in peace and honour. Find us on Telegram, Guardians 300. The discussion group is the way in, and then we can look at how we train you from that point forwards. For those that we're going to see in London, I look forward to meeting you, to make a difference, to change the momentum of what is going on right now. See you later.